Today we talk about the NHL's marquee mid-season event. Although, you know, when you put it like that, it doesn't really sound all that impressive. The Winter Classic, a return to hockey's roots with an outdoor event, typically held in a stadium seating at least 38,000 people. You know, when you put it like that, it doesn't sound all that close to hockey's roots, but it is a tradition that has been held annually, for the most part, from 2008 onward. And today, in anticipation for the return of the event, we look at the previous 12 and rank them from worst to best based upon spectacle, the game itself, and most importantly, my personal opinion, which cannot be legally disagreed with, so I hate to tell you that in advance. So with all that said, let's get down to business. There are Huns to defeat after all, and a like and subscribe button for you to hit if you haven't already. We kick things off with the worst Winter Classic of all time. That is 2016. Montreal 5, Boston 1. 67,000 people at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts. Home of the Patriots witnessed the most one-sided Winter Classic so far as the Habs took a 3-0 lead into the third period thanks to goals from David Desharnais, Paul Byron, and Brendan Gallagher. Bruins legend Matt Bolesky would score their lone goal in the third period before Montreal would tally two more, with Max Pacioretty and Paul Byron scoring again. Habs netminder Carey Mike Condon finished with 27 saves. Incredibly one-sided. The rivalry was already on the decline, and honestly, the entire weekend was overshadowed by an extremely unfortunate incident during the women's exhibition game between the Boston Pride and Les Canadiens that saw Pride forward Dana Lang paralyzed. Number 11, we have the 2011 Winter Classic, Washington 3, Pittsburgh 1. Another large attendance figure, 68,000 at Heinz Field in Pittsburgh. The Penguins would kick off the scoring in the second period with a goal from Evgeny Malkin, but the Caps would battle back with a Mike Knuble power play and Eric Fairs first of the game. He would score again in the third period to seal the deal, and Caps goaltender Semyon Varlamov finished with 32 of 33 shots stopped. This game, though, unfortunately is remembered for Caps forward Dave Steckel's blindside hit on Sidney Crosby, which resulted in a concussion that would end Crosby's season and cast doubt on his future, to say the least. Number 10, we have the 2017 Classic, Chicago 1, St. Louis 4. This was held at Busch Stadium in St. Louis. Over 46,000 people witnessed the home team win, despite the fact that Chicago opened up the scoring 1 minute and 2 seconds into the game, with defender Michael Kempney finding the back of the net. The Blues would tie it in the second, thanks to Patrick Berglund, and they'd run away with it in the third, thanks to goals from Vladimir Tarasenko, 2 in fact, and an empty netter from Alex Steen. Blues netminder Jake Allen stopped 22 of 23 shots. Number 9, we have the 2018 Classic between the New York Rangers and the Buffalo Sabres. The Rangers 3, Sabres 2. The final score, 41,000 people at Citi Field. And if Citi Field seems like a weird choice for the Rangers, you'd be right to think so. Originally, they aimed to have the game played at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point and then Yankee Stadium, only to then have to settle on Citi Field. And you notice that they were designated as the away team despite wearing home blue for the game, and that was due to legal technicalities involving Madison Square Garden and tax exemption status. How exciting this all was. The Rangers would strike twice in the first period, with goals coming from forwards Paul Carey and Michael Grabner. The Sabres would strike early in the second on a power play goal from Sam Reinhart, and early in the third, thanks to defender Rasmus Ristolainen, they would tie it. It would go to overtime, hardly the first overtime game we'll be talking about in this video, where Rangers forward JT Miller would score on the power play to win the game, although a shout-out is needed for Sabres goaltender at the time, Robin Lehner, who stopped 39 of 42 shots. At number 8, we have the 2019 Classic, Boston 4, Chicago 2, 76,000 people at Notre Dame Stadium. Yes, it's still a little bit weird that they played a game between Boston and Chicago in the state of Indiana. Chicago's Brendan Perlini would score the opening goal midway through the first, only for David Pastrnak to tie it on a power play goal 4 minutes later. Chicago would again take the lead midway through the second period thanks to Dominic Cahoon, but the Bruins, once more, would tie it a few minutes later on the power play, this time with Patrice Bergeron scoring. Sean Corrali would score the winning goal for the Bees midway through the third, with Brad Marchand sealing the game with an empty net goal in the final minute. At number 7, we have the 2009 Classic, Detroit 6, Chicago 4. Over 40,000 people packed historic Wrigley Field, and power plays were the theme of the day, including the first 3 goals of the game being scored on the man advantage. And honestly, the other theme of the day was drinking on the bench if you were Chris Chelios, with Wings coach Mike Babcock refusing to play him. Chicago's Christopher Stieg would open the scoring, only for Detroit's Mikael Samuelsson to tie it less than 7 minutes later. Before the end of the first, Chicago would add 2 more, with Martin Havlat and Ben Eager both scoring. Second period, all Detroit. 3 goals of their own, 2 from Yuri Hudler and 1 from Pavel Datsyuk, and they'd make it 5 goals in a row after adding 2 more in the third period, just 17 seconds apart, with defenders Brian Rafalski and Brett Lebda securing the game. Chicago's Duncan Keith would score with less than 10 seconds left, actually with 10 seconds left in regulation. At number 6, we have the 2020 Classic, Nashville 2, Dallas 4. 85,000 people packed into the most recent Winter Classic at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. The game is mostly remembered for Corey Perry's walk of shame as he was ejected after elbowing Preds defender Ryan Ellis. Nashville's Matt Duchene and Dante Fabro would each score on the ensuing man advantage, but from the second period on, it was all Dallas, with Blake Como, Matthias Janmark, Alex Radulov, and Andre Sekera all scoring to win the game for the Stars. Although calling yourselves winners while wearing an STDers jersey is an interesting way to go. At number 5, we have the 2014 game, Toronto 3, Detroit 2. The largest attendance in NHL history, 105,491 packed in to a Michigan Stadium. One of numerous Winter Classics to feature strong goaltending, as Detroit's Jimmy Howard stopped 24 shots, while Toronto's Jonathan Bernier stood on his head to finish with 41 saves. Detroit's Daniel Alfredsson, my God, that is still weird to say, opened the scoring in the second period, but the Leafs were able to tie it with 37 seconds left thanks to James Van Riemsdyk's 15th of the year. Toronto did take the lead early in the third, with Tyler Bozak scoring, only for Justin Abdelkader to tie it and force overtime, where became the second Winter Classic to go to a shootout, with Tyler Bozak scoring the winning goal at the Big House. Number 4, we have the 2012 Classic, New York 3, Philadelphia 2. Nearly 47,000 people at Citizens Bank Park, home of the Phillies. The game was delayed for 2 hours due to warm weather and sun glare. It's notable for the fact that Philadelphia's Braden Shen scored his first career NHL goal to open the scoring in the second period. Claude Giroux would add another one less than 2 minutes later. The comeback was on for the Rangers. Mike Rupp would score before the end of that second period and early in the third to tie the game, with Brad Richards scoring the winning goal just a few minutes later. And the game ranks this highly perhaps for this one moment, one of the most dramatic moments in the history of the Winter Classic, as Flyers forward Danny Briere was the recipient of a penalty shot with 19.6 remaining in regulation. Rangers goaltender Henrik Lundqvist would make the stop. We start off the top 3 with the 2015 Classic, Chicago 2, Washington 3, with nearly 43,000 people in Nationals Park. Eric Fair, one of the best performers in Winter Classic history, started off the scoring in the first, with Caps captain Alex Ovechkin making it a 2-0 game just a few minutes later. But Chicago would fight back this time. Patrick Sharp scoring on the power play late in the first, and Brandon Saad tying it in the second. It would go down to the wire, but Washington would win it at home, the first team to do so in regulation. Note it took until 2015 for that to happen, as they scored with just 13 seconds left. Troy Brouwer getting the goal on the power play against his former club. The runner-up on this list, the 2010 Classic, Philadelphia 1, Boston 2. 38,000 people at historic Fenway Park. Of course, the game between these two would result. What other game would result in the first ever fight in the Winter Classic? Philadelphia's Dan Carcillo taking on Boston's Sean Thornton. And the scoring would open in the second period with Flyers defender Danny Syvret getting his first career goal. Boston would finally get on the board, though, with just under 3 minutes left in the game. A power play goal from veteran Mark Recchi, and they'd go on to win the game in overtime, as Marco Sturm was able to beat Michael Layton. And yes, the Flyers would get their revenge in the playoffs, though. You're welcome for mentioning it to all you Philly fans out there. Which brings us to the number one spot on this list, and it should have been pretty obvious. We have the original, the 2008 Winter Classic, Pittsburgh 2, Buffalo 1. Their first outdoor event in 5 years, and the success that cemented the name Winter Classic into our hockey lexicon. 71,000 fans at Ralph Wilson Stadium, the vast majority of them being Sabres fans due to the lack of access to tickets for the Penguins fan base. You had the vintage jerseys, snow falling, a competitive game that saw the teams tied 1-1 after regulation thanks to great goaltending from both Ryan Miller and Ty Conklin, with the goals coming from Pittsburgh's Colby Armstrong and Buffalo's Brian Campbell. And who else would it be to seal the deal in a shootout and make this initial endeavor the success that it was? Of course, it was Sidney Crosby. And that's our list for today. Do you disagree? Well, again, I have to inform you that you legally cannot, but feel free to let me know what you think in the comments, and make sure to check out everything that we have going on in the description, including my second channel for non-hockey content, and of course, a link to the Tukey's Take podcast. Now let's send it over to some past their prime band for our lovely intermission show. Take it away.